now, all right, we're live. I'm sitting here with the great Maestro, George Ellis.
The great Maestro. Hello, everyone.
Oh, there he is.
Hey, Steve.
How are you? Look who's here, Amanda.
Hello, Amanda.
How's that? And Linda.
Hello,
Linda.
Hey, Linda. How you going from America?
Linda from America, who is a big fan of George's.
I'm a big fan of Linda's.
Are you? Which aspect of her work do you like?
I like her posts. I like that she stands up for what she believes in. Good on her.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, welcome. I've got 5 zillion followers.
Wow. Hello, 5 zillion followers.
Yeah.
I have about 5.
5 followers.
Without the zillion.
You're not much of an influencer. We're going to have a chat about music. All right? We're having a chat about music. And if you really like this, if it's really popular, we're going to have a podcast where we discuss music.
We know a little bit about it.
Okay. Linda loves you.
I love Linda. Aww. Thank you so much.
Love's a very easy commodity to give away.
I saw myself.
Yeah. How you going?
Say hello.
You're in our live feed.
Yeah, live feed. How you going? That's how we roll down here in Coogee. All right. So George, when did you tell me about your first musical experiences? What were they?
My father came home one night with a cassette, and I was 5 years old. This is 1968, 69. And I said, "What's that, Dad?" He said, "The whole world is listening to this band." I said, "What are they called?" He said, "The Beatles." And
in 1968 or 69,
yeah,
he was a bit slow off the mark.
He might have had other stuff before then, but I don't remember.
Which album was it?
Sergeant Pepper.
Oh, wow!
And so, I had my own cassette player.
Yeah.
In my room, and he wasn't really into it. So
he wasn't into Sergeant Pepper.
He wasn't really into it. No, it was a bit too psychedelic for him. So, but I took it to my room and played it. I remember it blowing my mind. I'd never heard anything like it.
At the age of 5.
At the age of 5, and I listened to that album right through on the first listen, and I had to listen to it again and again and again till my parents came into my bedroom and said, "You have to go to sleep."
At this point, I have to mention that George's speciality he's doing a thesis. He's writing a thesis for a PhD, and his specialty is where rock music and classical music intersect. Am I right?
And that's right, and particularly focusing on the orchestrations of George Martin, whose orchestrations were, of course, on
Sergeant Pepper's. At the age of 5,
yes.
Can you remember what your thoughts were? What did you think of it?
I'll quote the famous Steve Kilbey. I don't know. I didn't know what drugs were like, obviously, but I knew what they were going to be like if I ever took any, which I never really did. I'm not a drug taker.
So you could feel that there was something different going on here. Some other,
yes.
With their music, they were accessing some other sort of.
It was transport, or it was transcending. It was taking me to places that I'd never. I mean, I was only 5, but it was taking me to places that I'd never seen before.
Okay.
And never been since. And I was from that point on, I was completely addicted. I've never been addicted to anything except for music.
Okay.
And I was completely hooked, and the bugs never stopped. From that point when I listened to Sergeant Pepper until now, 50 or so years later, exactly 50 years later, I am still completely enamoured and enraptured and in love with music as much as that first day, if not more.
How important do you think George Martin was for that on that particular album?
Well, he provided all the colours as well as the arrangements. I mean, with things like Can't Buy Me Love, it was him that suggested they start with the a cappella chorus at the beginning, or maybe not a cappella, but chorus instead of a verse that Paul McCartney wrote. But by the time Sergeant Pepper came around, he was providing all the colours. For a song like A Day in the Life, that, as he called it, that orchestral orgasm, that would never have happened if a genius like George Martin wasn't there. And with a song like that, John Lennon had the idea of, oh, I read the news today, oh boy, and Paul McCartney had this other song which was Woke Up, Went Out of Bed, and he was the genius that put them together and linked it with this orchestral orgasm.
I would be so bold to say that the things George Martin did have never, with the orchestra, and the sort of cello, especially the things he was, cello lines and things he did, have never been surpassed, even to this day, and that when most bands, including the church, and any band works with an orchestra, they're tending very much to draw on what George did. Would you agree with that?
I'd agree with that. There have been some great orchestrators over the years, Tom Visconti, etc. Gus, I can't, but they all drew from George Martin. Thank you.
This is no cucumber?
No cucumber for me.
And cucumber for me.
All right.
So much.
Okay, we're going to have to suspend our conversation now.
Keep you in suspenders.
I'll put this bit up. We'll keep you in suspenders, and when we've finished our dinner, because you don't want to see us dribbling our salad, we'll come back and discuss some more of George Martin, the Beatles, and orchestration.
See you then.
Okay. Hi, we're back again. We were talking about George Martin and orchestration in rock and roll. When my hair's getting wispier and wispier. We were talking about George Martin and rock and roll, and welcome back. Here's George Ellis.
Hello everyone, good to see you.
And we've just had a swim at Wiley's, and we've just had dinner, and we're discussing rock and roll and orchestras. I'm going to say something about Sgt. Pepper's now. It's very controversial. I don't like it when the Beatles or anyone else references that Edwardian dance music shit. Like, songs like When I'm 64, Martha, My Dear. When they do that music hall thing?
Yeah.
Which sort of kind of all got benefit of Mr. Kite. When they invoke that music hall stuff, what do you think of that?
I know that the Beatles had a big fight over the song, what's the one Paul McCartney wrote, Maxwell's Silver Hammer, and that's another.
That's another one. Yeah.
Right. I know the other Beatles by that stage they hated Maxwell's Silver Hammer.
I think by that stage the rest of the Beatles hated Paul.
They hated each other anyway. I actually don't mind it. Sometimes Steve and I have different tastes. I think it's nice to have something different other than a straight rock beat, and the Beatles tried different things all the time, and I know you're a big fan of John Lennon, Steve, and one of the reasons you're a big fan of his is that he tried different things all the time. He never repeated himself, and that's one of the things about the Beatles. A song like When I'm 64 is different to something that the Rolling Stones or the Beach Boys would have done, and that's what I like about the Beatles. And I don't mind the musical stuff. I did a show recently, last year, called Beatles Orchestrated for Kids, so we did a Beatles concert with orchestra for a children's audience. And I remember orchestrating for the benefit of Mr. Kite and Maxwell Silver Hammer, and really loving that stuff. So you and I might agree to disagree on our taste on that.
All right. My thing is, I felt like when they did stuff like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and Strawberry Fields Forever, they were doing something brand new.
And
Norwegian Wood.
Yeah.
And look, I will not get into this thing, Paul versus John. I think they're both brilliant. I think Paul and John.
I completely agree.
It's very easy to look back, especially because John died, and so that was the end of it.
Yeah.
And he's a sort of a martyr and a saint now. Yeah. And Paul went on to do some stupid records. Mary Had a Little Lamb and Mull of Kintyre. Yeah. But you can't judge the brilliant things he did by some mistakes he made in his later day.
Well, the thing is that they spurred each other on, and when John wasn't around anymore, I think that, that changed the way Paul wrote. I think when they were both still together, and especially when they were in the Beatles from, say, 1960, maybe 66 onwards, they were, I think they've admitted,
competing with each other.
Paul admitted, I think they were trying to outdo each other.
At this stage, I'm going to mention someone who I know was highly influential on the Beatles and someone who made some fucking brilliant music, Mr. Brian Wilson.
Oh, okay, yes. Well, you know that he was always looking to them, looking to the Beatles to go, right, well, that's the benchmark, let's do something great. So he came up with Good Vibrations.
Yeah.
And before Good Vibrations could come out, Sgt. Pepper came out and he went, oh no, this is the album I was trying to make. And so, but Good Vibrations is a brilliant song and a great album, from a great album.
Do you know, George, how Good Vibrations was actually created?
No, tell me.
Okay, so he recorded lots and lots of little bits of music. So he would do the, the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, and then he'd do the, gotta keep those, and then the main body of the song, all those bits of music, he recorded separately, and then he stitched them all together.
That's amazing.
He put them all together.
That's not unlike what George Martin would do, of course, with things like, for the benefit of Mr. Kite, for the
Calliope.
Yeah. He threw up the tapes, cut all the tapes up, threw them up, and then spliced them all together. But tell me about in Good Vibrations. Tell me about the theremin. How did that come about?
The theremin. A theremin is an instrument that was played. It had an electrical field around it, and as you move your hand in and out, as you go in, it goes higher, and as you go in, it goes lower. Of course, the theremin, the first, it was sort of on Doctor Who as well, but then it was also on Good Vibrations, it was popularised. And, of course, none of the other Beach Boys played on Good Vibrations.
Yeah, and didn't Mike Love come back from when they were on tour without Brian Wilson going, why are you writing all this stuff? We're doing songs like California Girls and Surfer Girl, etc.
Yeah.
And but Brian Wilson said that was 1963, but we're now in 1967. And we need to move on.
It was a very schizophrenic Beach Boys. So you had the Beach Boys were out there, as you say, touring, going, two girls for every boy. And Brian Wilson was sitting in the studio concocting, as he called it, teenage symphonies to God. And, before he sort of completely lost his mind, and, he was writing songs in the sandpit. With a piano. I think that what he was doing, I think the Beatles and Brian Wilson were definitely cross-influencing each other as they tried to sort of create this sort of thing.
Speaking about rivalry, if rivalry is the right word, which it might not be, what about the Rolling Stones and the Beatles? I know the Beatles wrote the first hit for Rolling Stones, I Want to Be Your Man. They were friends, but were they friendly rivals, or were they secretly, rivals as in not good friends? Do you know that story?
I believe after reading thousands of books about the Stones and the Beatles, they were good friends, and I think the rivalry exists in other people's minds.
Right.
I think they're sort of operating in different genres. Yeah. I don't think musically the Rolling Stones are a patch on the Beatles. Okay. Like the Rolling Stones. And the Rolling Stones had a stab at their own Sgt. Pepper's. Have you ever heard it? Their Satanic Majesty's Request.
Yeah, I have.
And
actually.
It contained a song called She's a Rainbow, which had.
I like that song.
Yeah, no, that's a great song, and it had a very underrated piano player called Nicky Hopkins playing on it.
Right.
But I think the Rolling Stones were great at rocking out and being sexy and dirty and druggy and all of that. But I don't think as composers, I don't think they had that chordal knowledge that the Beatles had, because the Rolling Stones coming from the place of blues and playing the blues, and the Beatles coming when they did their residency in Hamburg,
Germany,
were doing all those they're doing all those kind of old cabaret songs.
Yeah, right.
So they really have that chordal knowledge.
Yes.
Of, you know, that thing where songs go from majors to minors and sevenths and all of that. I think the Beatles were really across that.
Songs like Things We Said Today go from major to minor all the time and vice versa.
Yeah. I don't think the Rolling Stones really had that sort of musicality.
Yeah.
Nor did they really... You mean you don't really need that? I mean...
Some songs like Paint It Black and maybe even Angie had a little bit of a nice tonality about it. You know, Angie has that A minor to D chord, which is really, really lovely.
I don't think A minor to D is anything special, George.
Well, let me ask you this. The Beatles, as we know, broke up in 1970. However, the Rolling Stones kept on going.
Yeah.
And in 1977 or 78, they came out with songs, or maybe even before then, they came out with songs like Miss You,
Yeah.
and later on Emotional Rescue, which I happen to really like. I know it's different to the 60s Rolling Stones, but I love that stuff. Here's the question I want to ask you. Had the Beatles kept on going, like the Rolling Stones did and still do, like the Rolling Stones still going, if the Beatles were around today and John Lennon was alive and George Harrison was alive and they were making records today, what do you think that might sound like? I know that's probably an impossible question to answer, but what do you think the Beatles would sound like today if all four of them were still together, they were still making music?
I really don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. They could have gone on revolutionising stuff and doing brilliant stuff, or they might have just settled back into the... There's a funny thing happens in rock and roll. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens where bands sort of have their golden period and then they think it's all right to just go on forever, just doing that.
Yeah.
Like the Rolling Stones. And there's that interview Jagger did and said, if I'm still singing Satisfaction when I'm 30, I'm giving up.
He's now 70.
He's now 75 and he's still singing it. I don't know. And the Beatles also had retired from live work.
That's true. But I think whatever they did together would have been better than what they did separately. I mean, in the early 70s, they were still writing good music together, like songs like Imagine and, Paul McCartney with the Band on the Run album, which I like. I know not everybody likes. But I still think they would have been writing better songs in 1980 together than they were apart, is my thinking.
Yeah, I possibly agree with that. Having said all of that, if I could just have one record by the Beatles or anybody in the Beatles, I would have All Things Must Pass by George Harrison.
Okay, well, see, I wonder if all of those albums, like Imagine and Band on the Run and All Things Must Pass, I'd say that they were writing those songs when they were still in the Beatles. And
They were.
Exactly. And that's why they spurred each other on. And that's why that music back then was so good. And without each other's company, remote or otherwise, they just didn't work together.
Yeah. If you're Paul McCartney and you're turning up in the studio and there's nobody else there, and just a producer, you go, I've written this song called Mary Has a Little Lamb, no one's going to say, hey, Paul, you can't do that, that's stupid. John Lennon would have, or George would have gone, I'm not fucking playing that, mate. But,
True.
And...
There's a filter, isn't there?
I think that's a good thing about bands. They sort of keep each other honest, and you've got to listen to what the other guys say.
Tell me, Steve, I know we've been talking about other great artists, but let's talk about another great artist. What gives you... Does a song come to you... I mean, I know it's very different in different ways at different times, but generally speaking, if there's a generally speaking, does a song come to you just like that, or do you sit down and go, right, I'm going to write a song? How does it... You've written so many great songs, from, your first album in 1980 through to Sydney Rococo and beyond. How do all these songs come to you? I guess your answer is in different ways.
In different ways. Usually music first. Look at my fucking wispy hair.
We're talking about your music.
I know, but I hate the way my hair's getting so thin it just stands up because there's no weight.
Is that how you write songs? By looking at your hair?
That's how I had 2 car accidents. One was looking at my own hair. I was driving along in Canberra, looking at my hair in the mirror, and I crashed into a guy. And then 2 weeks later, I was driving down the road and I saw a kid from my school with a really great haircut. I was looking at his haircut and I crashed in the car in the same fucking spot.
So kids, don't look at hairstyles.
Don't look at your hair when you're driving a car.
That's what we're here to tell you.
Yeah, I look like Tweety Bird for a second. Thanks a lot.
Oh, that's not very nice. Who wrote that? Your friend them.
That's some smart ass. My balls are 2 shiny walnuts in cling wrap. How pleasant. And
we're talking about high art.
That's really nice for you. Look, I write songs in different ways. I usually write the music first. That's how I usually do it.
But how does that music come? Is it in your sleep sometimes? Is it when you're having a shower?
No, I never hear music in my head. I always pick up an instrument and start fiddling around.
Right. Okay.
I usually pick up an instrument and start fiddling around until I find something I like.
Wow.
And then I just work on that.
What? How many can I even hazard a guess? Have you written 5,000 songs? How many songs? 2,000?
I've written 1,000 songs that are actually out there. You could actually find. Okay. And I probably wrote another 1,000 before that.
So let's say 2,000 songs.
Yeah, I've written 2,000.
You're saying that all of them have come from you picking up an instrument and fiddling around and going,
yeah,
oh.
Yeah.
So a song like, I don't know, For a Moment We're Strangers,
yeah,
to Lagoon,
yeah,
and everything in between,
yeah,
have all come from you picking up an instrument.
I pick up a guitar, I pick up a bass, I play around on a piano.
I find that amazing.
Why? How else would you write them?
Just from your head sometimes, or I guess
I've never really sat around having songs come into my head. I always have to pick up an instrument and figure them out.
Okay.
What about you?
I work out arrangements, and I do a little composing, not nearly as much as your songwriting, but I do a little composing, and I do, as you know, a lot of arranging, and virtually all of it is in my head. So I remember writing the arrangement to a song called by David Bowie, Starman. I was having a shower, and I knew I had a deadline to meet that afternoon, and I thought, I've got to do Starman today, and I was washing my hair or whatever I was doing, and all the melodies and how I was going to shape the arrangement came in that 3-minute shower, and then I went to the computer and wrote it all down.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of a different way of working.
Say someone commissioned you to write an orchestral piece, right?
Yes. Yes.
Which instrument do you start with?
I start with my head.
So you hear the whole fucking thing. And what do you write down first?
I go to the computer and I just go. In answer to your question, I usually do start at the strings.
Yeah.
And whatever I've got in my head.
Which string? The violins?
All strings, but actually the cello and bass or violins, usually all of them at once.
Right.
And I kind of map it out on the strings, and then often I take the strings away if it's a full orchestration.
What's that program you use?
Finale.
He uses Finale to
compose. Most people use a program.
Look at my hair. He uses Finale.
And most people use a program these days called Sibelius. They say it's better. I know Finale. I learned it in the 80s, and I've kept it, and it still works for me.
Do they keep fucking updating it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you have to stay across all the updates?
I guess you do. I don't always, so I don't do it all the time. But sooner or later, I do. Usually later. There you go.
Oh yeah, I'm putting my hat on to stop my fucking hair flowing around.
I could use your hat. My hair's going grey.
I had Logic, and I loved Logic, and I understood it, and then I had to update it, and then Logic was completely different.
I've never had Logic, but I don't know about the program either.
I'm so dismayed. I'm so dismayed when you learn a fucking program, and it's really complicated, and you learn it, you know where everything is, you know where all the stuff is and all the loops and you know how to do it. And then they completely changed the program.
Has it gone, has it? Oh no, when Finale gets updated, it's like minimal changes. Yeah.
Oh, Logic completely went upside down and a different colour. And yeah, you could do a whole lot more different things. But I just wanted to keep Logic as it was. And they did the same with GarageBand. Everything fucking changes all the time. You've got to keep... And I can't be bothered. When I want to write a song, I don't want to be bothered fucking around learning a new program, which I've already learned. And when I know where everything is, and then they change it all around.
I don't know that program either. I use technology. It's a necessary evil, and it does speed things up. I mean, when I first started orchestrating back in the 16th century, we did it with... chisel and no, we did it with pencil and paper, when I first started in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was good for me because I really had to learn and hear it in my head, whereas a computer plays it back to you and you can fix it. But it does speed things up. So I am glad that I can use the computer.
If the computer was taken away from you, would it slow you down and you had to go back to the old way and you just had to do it on paper?
It wouldn't slow the creative process down. I would still write the arrangement in my head as fast or as slow, the same speed, but it would slow the writing out of it down, because when you write out an orchestration, as well as writing the full score for the conductor, you also have to write out the flute part and the oboe part and the bassoon part, etc. Whereas with the press of a button, with Finale and with Sibelius, it prints out all the parts for you, so that's where it speeds up.
It really fascinates me as a guy who can't do this. You could hear a piece of music in your head, you could write it down on a bit of paper, the orchestra could play it, and you wouldn't be surprised at all. It would be exactly as you thought it would be.
It would be like, for example, if you were writing a story as opposed to a piece of music or an orchestration. You don't need the typewriter or the computer to tell you what the story is. All the computer is doing is keeping a record of it for you.
Yeah.
It's not the computer is not the creative. It's just the tool for getting it down on paper, so to speak. But, and if you write a story, if you come up with a story in your head and then you put it down on a computer and print it out and give it to the actors, you're not going to be surprised by what you hear. You might have a different interpretation of how they play it, but you're going to go, that's the story I wrote, and that's the orchestration I wrote. I wanted the first violins to do that. I wanted the strings to go ba 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 at the beginning of Sydney Rococo. I heard that in my head, I put it down on computer and I gave it to them, and they played it like that.
Okay.
Sometimes I might change something if I think, I wrote that articulation, I don't like that, or maybe that's not the best tempo, I might change it, but I'm not hugely surprised going, that's not how I wanted it at all.
Right. Well, I can't do that. I don't do that. I can't do that. I start by playing a bit, and then I listen to that, and then I fiddle around till I find something nice that goes on top of that, and something nice that goes on top of that. There's no way that I ever could conceive a whole piece of music in my head. Well, it comes to me bit by bit by bit. And that was my early mistake when I started trying to write songs. So I thought the whole bloody song should just download in my head. And that didn't really work out for me. So I really only started writing good songs. Anyone who's heard the Baby Grand tapes would know this. I only started writing good songs when I got my 4-track.
Right.
And I could jam along with myself and sort of overdub and sing. And that's what really gave me the edge when I spent 3 years just amassing all these songs on my own, writing them bit by bit by bit, instead of thinking, I'm going to get the whole song as this massive download.
Well, it's worked for you. Isn't it interesting the different ways people can take the creative process?
Yeah.
And look at how it's worked for you. You've written these amazing songs, many, many, many amazing songs over many years, and you've used that process. And albums like Starfish and Number 23, the Church album 20. Look at the great songs on that. So if it works for you, it works for you.
Look, one thing I'm good at. One thing I am good at. I'm not.
Choosing great friends. No. Okay.
No. Yeah. No. I don't. I haven't written songs from dreams. Sorry. one thing I'm good at. I'm not really musically brilliant, but one thing I'm really good at is I can spot potential in something really quickly. So when the band started writing the songs all together, we would sort of jam around, and then I'd go, this is the bit I want, this is the bit I want to work on. And I can hear the potential in something. I saw an old interview with Mark Bolan, and he went, man, I just strum a C major chord and I hear a million possibilities.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't come from inside his head before, but
he strums the C, and then he can hear all the stuff that would go with it.
With a few hallucinogenic aids.
I don't think Mark Bolan was big into hallucinogenics. I know he used to drink. He drank a lot of wine and snorted a lot of cocaine at the end, which is where it's all started going wrong.
Right. Well, there you go. So there's another moral for you, kiddies.
Yeah. Don't snort cocaine and drink wine and think you're going to write a great song, because you won't. I guarantee it. Do you when you're composing, do you drink wine?
No, not really. No, I usually only drink after a concert.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever had writer's block?
No.
You don't. So if someone says to you, I want you to write a piece of music, you can sit down and write it to order.
It depends on the deadline. If it's straight away, not necessarily. But if I have a week at least, what I do when I write songs, when I write music, is I actually do it on walks.
In your head?
I dream up melodies in my head. And I think it was Paul McCartney that said this as well, and that is...
ham and eggs.
If you leave it and come back to it, if you've forgotten the melody, it
wasn't worth having.
Yes, but if you've remembered it,
Hello.
If you've remembered
Poor
it,
blimey.
then it's a good melody. So that's what I do. I don't get many commissions, and the few that I've had, I've always done that. If I've had at least a few days, I go for walks and I leave it, I go to other work, and then I come back to it, and whatever I've remembered, I've kept it, and that's how. So I've never really had writer's block.
Right. Nor have I. I don't believe in it. I won't allow it. It's not. It doesn't work for me. Writer's block.
Ben Folds agrees with you.
Yeah?
I've just written his book. I've read his book. I've just read his book called "Dream About Lightning Bugs," and he completely agrees. There's no such thing as writer's block. He says if you've got it, you just push through it, and you come up with something. Even if it's terrible, you can fix it
Persevere.
up, or put it away and come back and get something new.
Tell me this: have you ever been working on a piece of music and going, "Oh, it's not right," and then you might just put on a piccolo or a bassoon or just one thing, and suddenly with that extra little thing it all just magically falls into place?
Not so much an instrument like that, but another new germ, another little melody, whichever instrument it is. But sure. Or actually more drastically than that, I've actually been known to just discard it, delete it, or not delete it, just put it away safely, and then start again with the knowledge that if this doesn't work out, I've got that to fall back on. But I start again, and invariably it's better than what I discard.
Okay. What advice would you give someone who wants to be a maestro, wants to conduct orchestras, stuff like that? What would you say?
Conducting is a technique, just like it is playing the violin or flute, and you need lessons.
Yeah.
You find either a good teacher, or you enroll at the conservatorium and you take conducting classes and you learn how to conduct. And here's the thing, you learn how to conduct classical music. You've got to learn how to conduct, say, Beethoven's First Symphony in order to be able to conduct rock music as well.
Okay.
Because the technique is there's a special technique. You have to learn the patterns, not only the patterns, how to show the dynamics, how to show balance, etc.
Okay.
So you have to learn.
If you wanted to be a conductor, do you think there's any particular instrument would be conducive to that? Violin?
The answer is no, not really, but it does help to have a good knowledge of piano. Or, well, guitar as well, because it's good to know harmony. You need to know chords. You need to know what a secondary dominant is. You need to know that, you know, the subdominant of F major is B flat, etc. They're all really important things to know about how music is constructed. Strings help. You don't have to be a string player to be a good conductor, but knowledge of bowings, spiccato, pizzicato, all that when you're conducting an orchestra, because when you conduct an orchestra, it's going to have, if nothing else, it's going to have strings.
Yeah.
It might have winds and brass as well, but it's not going to have winds and brass but no strings.
Yeah.
It's good to, even if you don't play a string instrument, it's really good to immerse yourself in how strings are played, because when you're out in front of them and you say you want 2 down bows in a row, you need to know what you're talking about.
When George and I did a show where it was just orchestra and me, and I was standing in the conductor's spot with him, and I was amazed that you knew what every instrument could do, and you'd be asking, you know, can you do a bit more of this, and can you do a bit more slurring, can you do a bit more sliding, can you do a bit more mute palm ostinato, and you were completely conversant with what every instrument in the orchestra was capable of.
It's really important, and one thing I studied when I was in the United States, I studied orchestration with a private teacher plus classes at the master's, for my master's degree, and our lecturers used to take us through each section of the orchestra. I can't play trumpet, but I can.
But you know what a trumpet can do.
Exactly, I know which fingers go down where, and where the break is in the clarinet. I know that the clarinet and the saxophone have the same, you know, the same embouchure, the same reed, the same, and all things like that. It's really important. And further to that, I remember at that same rehearsal that you're talking about at City University, I remember we went through a song. I can't remember what it was. Might have been Everyone, the song we wrote with Mark Kennedy. And we went through it, and I said, Steve, are you happy with that? And you said, yeah, I'm happy with that. And I said, let me just try something. And I've said to the strings, can we do this bowing instead of whatever bowing they were already doing? And we did it, and it was different. And you said, that's amazing. That sounds so different. I said, yeah, it's all in the bowing. Yeah. So that's important for a conductor to know. It can, because it gives you extra options.
Okay. A lot of people don't know this, but George was also a bass player. Can we have some comments on the bass guitar?
Well, here's the thing. I started music before I learned piano and cello and classical, and went to the conservatorium and studied classical music. When I was in year 7, I picked up guitar. Even before then, I picked up guitar.
Did you have lessons?
I did have lessons.
Did you have bass guitar lessons?
I didn't have bass guitar lessons, but I had guitar and piano lessons. Yeah. And one thing, I joined a band when I was in year 7 or year 8 because I saw, you know, older rock and roll people getting girls when they were, you know, in their adulthood. So I thought, that's a good thing to do. Anyway, the reason to mention all that is I picked up rock music, and I learned rock music before I really studied classical music. So I knew rock music. Speaking of bass guitar, I was playing bass guitar for a band that, you know, used to support bands like, you might have heard of them, called The Church and other such bands. Moving Pictures, In Excess sometimes.
Wow, Moving Pictures.
We Hot Chisels sometimes. Anyway,
the Chisels. Ding.
So I knew rock music. And, you know, as you know, I had a love for the Beatles and Beach Boys, etc. And then I studied classical music. And then when I first started working in music and conducting music, it was only classical music. Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, Stravinsky, etc. And then, I think one of my first jobs conducting pop music or rock music with orchestras was Augie March with their song One Crowded Hour, and I did something with Alex Lloyd. We did that song Amazing.
But what about the bass? What about the bass guitar? I asked you about the bass guitar.
Well, I really love the sound of the bass. I mean, I love the sound of your bass. I mean, you know the song. You know the song. Well, I was about to ask you, do you know the song Tantalized?
I am familiar with that song.
When we were rehearsing that, you know, and because live it's different to the recording, right? And you know how, you know, the rhythm guitar does that, and before that, which you don't do on the record, but you do live. You goes do do do. The bass goes
Yeah.
do do do.
Yeah.
That vibrates through you when you hear that.
Yeah.
And
Pretty simple stuff compared to fucking Stravinsky, though, isn't it?
I remember hearing that, going, that is a bloody great bass sound.
Right.
And I just love the sound of the bass. It vibrates through you.
Yeah.
I mean, most people don't really hear the bass, but if you didn't have it, they would know that it's not there.
Look, I did an interview with a geezer yesterday, and he said to me, why did you play the bass and not the guitar? Like, weren't you disappointed you weren't playing the guitar? And I was like, are you fucking joking, mate? The bass is the king. And I read an article the other day that said people listening to rock music understand the changes from the bass. They understand what's really going on in the music from the bass.
Yes.
The bass is so important. People think being a bass player is like a second-rate guitarist. You're so fucking wrong.
Ask Paul McCartney if it's second rate. Ask Sting if it's second rate. Who else? Ask John Entwistle if you could. If it's a second, if it's not important. It's a bloody important instrument.
Yeah.
And it informs the rest of the harmonies of the.
It does.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been orchestrating some Fleetwood Mac lately, and I don't love all Fleetwood Mac songs, but what I do love is the rhythm section.
Very simple.
The Fleetwood and the Mac. Well, John McVie, when he plays the bass, he often, like you do in songs like, watch me forget which song, you often go to the sixth of the chord.
What's
like
that mean?
Like if it's a G chord, you'll go up to the E.
Oh, yeah.
E before you go to the D. That's the sixth before you go to the fifth.
Yeah.
John McVie does that all the time.
Uh-huh.
And in songs like Say You Love Me and I can't remember, it was Rhiannon even. He goes up to the sixth, whether it's the major, usually the major, but sometimes the minor sixth. And the sixth is bloody important. It's such a beautiful sound. Do-do-do-do-do, without the do-do-do, it's just a normal bomb, which Elvis Presley did in the 50s. That was fine, but we've moved on from there. And so without the bass playing and the drumming of Fleetwood Mac, some of those songs would not stack up nearly as well. So the bass is a bloody important instrument.
Yeah. All right. Well, guess what? My phone has run out of charge, and yes, I've got a fretless bass now, and I'm playing it on the new Church album a bit. We're going to say goodbye to George. If you'd like to see more of me and George, please write in and tell us, because we're thinking of having a podcast where we're going to discuss music all the time and from our respective group viewpoints. But for now, I'm saying goodbye from Coogee and George.
See you later, everyone. Good to talk with you.
Okay, I'm going to put this one up and you can watch it. And see you later, everybody. Thanks for watching.